Hello, everyone. My name is Mirna, and on behalf of the Mindalia TV team, we want to welcome you to Mindalia live streaming, where thousands of people around the world gather to see the lectures and interviews organized by Mindalia TV. Today with us, we have Kerri Hummingbird. Kerri has been a social activist and philanthropist for over 3 decades. With neat insights and experimental lessons such as firewalking, she catalyzes mind shifts that clear stagnation and fear and transforms life challenges into gifts of wisdom. She is the founder of the Skills No Pills program, and we have her today with us. Before starting, we want to remind you that if you want to help the world through Mindalia, there is a couple of things that you can do. And it's going to make a big difference just by liking this video, leaving us a positive comment down below, or subscribing to our channel. You help us reach as many people as possible throughout the globe. Also, while we are live streaming, you're going to have the chat on the side of your screen that is going to be the tool in which you can present the questions to our guest today. Just please remember the format. You're going to be using the word question in caps, then the place where you are seeing us from, and the actual question. Without further ado, we're going to start with Kerri. Kerri?
Hi, how are you doing today?
Doing good, thank you.
Good. Yeah, so I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me on the show.
It's our pleasure, Kerri, and I want to thank you. We had a small delay. It was a technological issue, but we're finally on air, and we are delighted to have you, so the screen is all yours.
Wonderful.
Thank you. You can start whenever you want.
Oh, okay, great. Well, so I'm excited to be here. I'm Kerri Hummingbird, and I have been given a message. I've been given an important message to bring to the world. And that message is really that, we are the keepers of the garden. We came here to be those, to take care of the planet. We came here to take care of the animals and the plants and to be in this beautiful place called Earth. And actually, we're kind of falling down on that job. If you look around the world today, we're not really doing the best job of that we could be doing. We're not necessarily taking care of ourselves or our children or the garden, the plants, the jungle, all the animals. We could be doing a better job of that. And, Mother Earth is a mother. That's why we call her Mother Earth. She creates all these beautiful things for us to enjoy. And every mother deserves respect. And at some point, the mother, if she's not getting respected, will take stronger measures to teach the lessons that need to be taught to her children. And as we look around the world, we're seeing those lessons unfolding. So we're seeing that volcanoes are erupting. We're having, a lot of Earth events happening around the globe. We're having a lot of tests to our desire to make a choice between two worlds. So in one world, we continue down the path that we're going down right now, that we've been going down. And we can see with a great deal of clarity where that's heading. It's heading in the consumption of all the resources. It's heading in the place of some disasters, some natural disasters. And, we have a different choice we could be making. The choice is that we could be stepping in to being the keeper of the garden the way that we were meant to be. Now, one thing is getting in the way of that, stepping into being the keeper of the garden. And that's this thing called distraction. Distraction in all kinds of forms. So we have distraction in terms of being too busy, for example. That's a good one. So we're distracted by being too busy all the time. We keep ourselves so busy, we never have time to check in with ourselves. We never have time to really look deeply inside. We're so busy trying to survive or trying to keep up with all the things we think we're supposed to do that maybe we don't pay attention to even our health. Maybe we don't pay attention to our children or our families. So when we're trying to figure out how to be in the world, we have this choice between two worlds. And in one world, we're distracting and avoiding. And in the other world, we embrace the work that we're here to do. So a lot of the messages that I get to share with people is that Earth is really a school. It's a school where we come to learn and grow. It's a school where we come to learn a whole lot of lessons that we actually came here to learn, things that we chose to come in and learn. And a lot of people say, well, I didn't choose to come in and learn about cancer. Or I didn't choose to come in and learn about abuse. I didn't choose to come in and learn about poverty. But actually, every one of us is having exactly the experience that we need to have in order to learn and grow and do the work that we came in to do as a soul, not as a personality. And I think that's the major thing that we get confused about, is because we get convinced that what we are, who we are, is this personality that we are currently being. You know, we get confused that, oh, I am Kerri Hummingbird, you know, for example, when in fact, that's just who I'm being right now. But that's not the sum total of who I am. I'm actually a soul that has lived many lives. This is just who I'm being right now. And I happen to like this life, as usually we do like the one we're in right now. We get very attached to it. But if we take that limited perspective and we believe that story is the totality of who we are, then we miss out on an opportunity. We miss out on the opportunity of that second world I was talking about. That second world where we actually become the keeper of the garden. So a lot of what happens is that we get really attached to the personality that we are being. And in order to understand that, you can think about all the times that you told your story. So if somebody asked you, who are you? Or tell me about your life, you probably have like a set story that you share about yourself. You probably have that story that you tell over and over again about yourself. You probably repeat the same stories to every person that would ask you who you are. And when we're wanting to make a shift into a higher way of being, a higher vibrational state, to understand like who we are in truth, we need to let go of the story that we tell about our life. And we need to step into an opening where we might discover something that we didn't know yet about ourselves. So one metaphor I like to use to explain this to people is that if you have a bowl of soup and you are being the soup, then you can add some spices to the soup, you can add some ingredients to the soup, but pretty much you're that soup and you're going to be that soup. And that's all you can be. That's sort of like being the personality. You're going to be the person who grew up in a certain town with certain parents, with a certain name and a certain body. And if you're being the bowl, you can change a lot of things. Because if you're being the bowl, if you don't like what's in your soup, or you don't like the flavor of the soup, or you don't like even the fact that it's soup anymore, and you want to change it, let's say you want to have pasta, or you want to have vegetables, or you want to have ice cream, then you can see that you can have those different contents to your bowl because you can change out the contents. So it's the same way with life, with this personality versus soul identity thing, is that you can decide, you know, I'm kind of tired of telling that story that I always tell about how I was raised or where I was born or how I was grown. I'm kind of tired about that story. I want to experience a different kind of story. Well, You can change the way you talk about your life starting this moment. There's no better time than right now to change that story. And changing the story could be as simple as reframing the story in a way that's more favorable. And back to the idea of Earth School, well, you can reframe the story that you were learning a lesson, that you were actually learning a powerful lesson that you came here to learn and that you chose to learn. And from that experience that you had, you grew from it. And you learned something new about your capabilities. You learned something new about people. You learned something new about the planet. Whatever those lessons were that you learned from your challenges. Now, one of the major challenges that people have in their lives usually is something around discomfort, either physical discomfort in their bodies or mental discomfort, meaning that they don't feel well inside their minds, maybe emotional discomfort. And all of those things can be viewed the same way. They are the contents of the bowl. They're a temporary experience. Now, for all of us, the body that we're currently living in is a temporary experience that lasts as long as we are being this personality. But the state of that body is a temporary experience that can change at any time if you choose to change it. If you can realize that you are being the bowl instead of the personality, instead of the contents of the bowl. So this is what ancient cultures around the world have known for a long time. They've known that they are simply here for now and they're temporary, but that something about them is eternal. Something about them lives on forever. And many of the wisdom keepers, they've known this for a long time, that when you can tap into being the bowl instead of the contents of the bowl, when you can tap into that greater self, that bigger self, you can actually change just about everything there is about yourself because you're tapping into a force that's connected to everything that is. And from that place, you can heal. Now, I want to talk about another aspect of healing, which is belief. So if you're really attached to believing that you are the personality or that your current life experiences completely define who you are, then it's going to be really difficult to budget in more than like a 1 degree of change. It's going to be very difficult to really change anything if you're really attached to the soup that's in your bowl, if you're really attached to that story that you want to tell. It's going to be hard to budget much more than just a few inches. But if you can lose attachment to it and realize that you are connected to all that is, that you are that bowl, that larger force that's connected to everything that is, then you can see that this is just a temporary existence you're having. It's temporary existence, and not only that, just a temporary condition of that existence. It's just temporary. It's only going to last a little while. It's only going to last however long it lasts, and how long it's lasting has to do with the classroom that you're in on Earth School. It has to do with how long that class lasts for. And different classrooms on Earth last different amounts of time. It depends on how quickly you can learn the lessons of that classroom. So some classrooms are going to last 1 lifetime. Other classrooms are going to last a week or a month. Other classrooms will last many lifetimes. So there's a certain amount of realization that you are here to learn and grow. And as you can embrace that idea, you can unlock certain potentials that aren't available to you if you are living as the soup that's in the bowl rather than the bowl. So another way of talking about this is that if you're very convinced that Western medicine and your doctor is the only way that you can heal yourself, and that the only expert that can help you is someone that's medically trained in a Western profession, then you're going to feel maybe a little trapped into that mode, like there is no other way, and I don't believe anything else is possible. And from that belief system, well, then you're going to be experiencing the effect of that belief system, which is that things aren't very easy to change, that it takes a lot of hard work, or that you are given a certain prescription and that you'll have to take that for life, and you'll have a diagnosis, and that a diagnosis will be part of your identity, part of the personality that you are being, and it will be wrapped around you like a very tight, snug coat. And it will be hard to change that thing. But if you can become the bowl and you can let go of the contents, the story that you tell, the story that others have told about you, the diagnosis that got hung on you, if you can expand past that and realize that that's a temporary experience, and that that experience has been designed to teach you something, and then you can start the journey of discovery into what exactly that experience was meant to teach you, then you can step into the second world we were talking about on Earth, where now you're playing with the consciousness that created everything rather than fighting against it. You're discovering that it has a lot of wisdom to impart to you if you choose to accept the temporary conditions that are being given to you. So everything is a teacher in this second world I was mentioning. For example, if you ended up with cancer, that cancer is a teacher for you. What is that cancer teaching you that you didn't know before you got the cancer? Is it teaching you about your diet? Is it teaching you about what loving your body means? Is it teaching you about anger? Is it teaching you about your cycling thoughts in your mind and what they do to you when you allow them to run rampant? What's it teaching you? When you open to the idea that you're in Earth School and that everything that happens to you is temporary, and that every experience that's presented to you is an opportunity to learn and grow, then you can see that everything has a message for you. So this is why I founded the Skills Not Pills movement. Because first of all, it's very clear, skills, not pills. And it's not to shame people that are taking pills by any means. It's not about that. In fact, I myself took some medication, some anti-anxiety and antidepressant medication after I had my first child. This was 1999, for about 13 years. And at the time that I started taking it, I really felt like I needed that medication in order to cope with being a new mother and with all the things that were happening to me when I had my first child. If I knew then what I know now, which is always hindsight is 20/20, and so we never really do, I would say that I needed some child healing. I would say that I was having the experience I was having because it was bringing up memories from my early childhood that needed to be healed, that wanted to be heard, and that my body was letting me know that that work needed to get done, that it was time to look at those things from my early childhood, some of which was very traumatic for me. But I didn't know then what I know now, so I did the best I could with the tools I had at the time. And those tools were psychotherapy and medication. So there's no shame in any of this. It's just one doorway to pass through on the way to figuring out your puzzle. And the reason for the movement is to share that there's so many more pieces to the puzzle that could be discovered beyond the one piece that many people are given of Western medicine and a prescription. So taking that journey to realize that everything is a teacher requires a couple of things. It requires the faith that in fact you are in school and that in fact the experience is temporary that you're having, that's uncomfortable. And that if you were to listen to the experience and you were to listen to the teacher of that experience, whatever that teacher might be, that you could learn something about yourself that would then progress you into a new place in your life where maybe you could leave that classroom and you could enter a different classroom, which might teach you some new things that are pretty interesting to learn. It just requires being willing to let go of everything you think you know, which I just roll off my tongue as if that's so easy. And it is for me now because I've surrendered to that part of myself. I've surrendered to the bigger self. I've surrendered to the bowl and let go of the contents. And ever since I did that, I entered a new world, which is that second world I was talking about, that second potential of Earth, where I realized that everything that I could think of from my personality that would be cool to have or do is pretty teensy weensy tiny compared to the potentials that are possible when I open to the self that I am. That's like the bowl, because the self that's the bowl can have any experience inside of it. So if I'm having something uncomfortable happen, the first thing I want to do is embrace the discomfort, is to listen to it, is to be with it, and avoid the distractions that keep me from looking at it. So some of the distractions that keep people from looking at their stuff that's begging to be looked at would be like alcohol, for example, or drug usage, or even television, and definitely the pills, because the pills numb the pain. So if the pain is numb, then we are not going to learn anything from it because we are numbing ourselves to it. We're not listening to it. We're putting it on a dimmer and we're like ignoring it, because if we don't feel it, we can push it aside and we can completely ignore the pain. And I did that for years, so there's no judgment here about that. There's just an understanding that if we are taking pills, then we're not really looking at the pain. We're not feeling it. We're not experiencing it. And we're not going to then grow. We're not going to grow from it because it's impossible to grow from something that you can't feel and experience. So the encouragement really here is to allow yourself to feel the things that are making you uncomfortable and to learn how to listen to them in a new way. And certainly if you're on medication right now, consult a holistic doctor that is willing and able to help you transition physically off of the medication. And then it's a good idea to have a guide that can help you mentally, emotionally, spiritually transition off the medication, because those are two different things. There's the body's needs and the body's abilities. And then there's the emotional, mental, spiritual component, which is, your mindset, your ability to believe it's possible, your tracking of the things that are keeping you in a modality or a state of mind or a state of living where you feel unable to be or cope with the pain, where you feel unable to listen to it and be with it for the message that it has for you. Now, a lot of people avoid that journey because they say, oh man, if I open that closet, it's going to be awful. I don't want to know what's going to happen there. It's not going to be fun. But I beg to differ because I did the traditional route for a good part of my life, maybe 25 years. I sat on a couch and I told my story over and over again to a psychotherapist, and I took the medications for a good 13 years. And that part was actually, for me, fairly unpleasant and uncomfortable. The journey since I began this new path, which was maybe 8 years ago, has been extremely fast and extremely magical because I get to find out all these incredible things about myself as a multidimensional being, not just as a personality that I thought I was, how I thought the world was. So how we heal is we open to this larger self that we are. We open to a potential beyond the limited stories that we've been telling. And we are willing to let go of the stories that we've been telling in favor of becoming something new. So the best analogy for this is the caterpillar becomes what? The butterfly. That's why I love having butterflies behind me. The caterpillar is very much about, consuming things. It does a lot of consuming. It eats everything in sight because at some point it's going to enter the chrysalis if it makes it that far. And when it enters the chrysalis, it's going to need a lot of energy in order to do the next part. And that part is transformation. Inside that chrysalis, everything falls apart. Things get pulled out. The entire identity, if you think about it this way, the entire identity of that caterpillar comes apart in the chrysalis. But it doesn't go anywhere because it's still inside the chrysalis. So just a really cool thing happens where all the thing that used to be the caterpillar dissolves and then becomes the butterfly. It just gets put back in a new way. And isn't that cool that that happens? I think that's a miracle. And that same exact thing can happen for every single one of us. If we're willing to let go of being the personality, if we're willing to let go of how we think it is, if we're willing to let go of the story that we keep telling about ourselves over and over and over again, if we're willing to let go of all of our judgments and ideas about how the world is, it will always be this way. None of that's true. It's only true because you told the story again and again. We're excellent storytellers. And the energy of this conscious matrix that we live in, this, I like to call the Great Spirit. You could call it God. You could call it anything you like. But this consciousness is capable of anything. And it lets you be the co-creator of your experience. So all the stories that you tell, in fact, become true because then you get to experience it. All the words that you speak, all the thoughts, all the emotions that you feel, you get to have all of it if that's what you want to experience. And you can also have something completely new and different when you open to the possibility that you can co-create a whole different possibility for yourself, a whole different reality. And that only really comes when you're able to become the bowl and let go of the contents and stop associating or identifying as the content of the bowl, but becoming that larger self instead that's connected to all that is, connected to all potential. And I like to do this on a daily basis. I mean, I let go of it all every day. And I open to what's true now. What is true now for me? And here's the coolest thing. The butterfly that's inside the chrysalis doesn't sit there and say to, the creator, I know you were going to make me with blue wings, but I'd rather have purple. Or, I really don't like that color. Can I have bigger wings? I don't really like these. That doesn't happen. But we do that. Oh, I don't like the way my legs are. I don't like this. I don't like that about myself. We're constantly critiquing the creation. So what I'm suggesting is if we can come into harmony with the creation that we are by letting go of all of our stories and projections every day, and then just appreciating the gift and opening. Show me what butterfly I am. Show me who I really am. I want to know. I'm ready. I'm open. I'm fearlessly, courageously ready to face myself in truth. And that's the journey that I like to lead people on, is to come into that place of healing where there's a whole different experience of life. It's coming home to yourself. It's coming home to the innate design that you are. That's beautiful and that's needed. That's part of this beautiful tapestry of life on earth. You wouldn't have been created if you weren't a necessary piece to the puzzle. Everything is necessary. There's no mistakes. And it's a great opportunity that we're in right now with the energy supporting us and all the guides and all your ancestors who love you dearly and are right here with you every moment to ask for help in finding your true self, to ask for the help, to invite the help, because this is a very respectful universe and you came here to experience things and to live a life. And therefore, nothing is going to interrupt that experience. But you can become the bowl and let go of the contents of the bowl. And then you can decide, I'm open for help. I'm willing to find out who I am in truth. I'm willing to know how I serve in truth. And I'm here and I'm listening and I'm open. And when you invite the help will be there in spades to help you make that transformation. So that's the kind of work that I like to do with people. I like to help them go through the chrysalis and come out the other side a butterfly. And it's a very sacred work. And it's always touches me deeply and opens my awareness and my mind as to what's possible, what we're doing here on Earth. And I think as we each fall into our own unique design, we complete the parts of the tapestry that are needed in order to have that new Earth that I was talking about, that one where we step in to really be the keepers of the garden, because we're each doing individually what we're really meant here to do. And working together, we can really build a planet that honors every single creation that was made here, because we know that it was meant to be here. So I hope that was helpful. I think we're about at time.
Thank you, Kerri. Yes, we are about 5 minutes away from the end of the section. But if you are okay with it, we can start with our questions, the Q&A section.
Sounds
good?
Great. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for the content. And before going to the Q&A, we are going to just remind our audience that if you want to help the world through Mindalia, there is a couple of things that you can do that could make a big difference to many people just by liking this video or adding a positive comment below the screen. You are helping us reach out to more people who could benefit from the content of the channel. And we are going to start with the Q&A, okay?
Yeah.
The first question that we have here is, why is so hard to realize that what happens to us is teaching us at that very moment?
Why is it so hard? Well, because it hurts, because it hurts when we're learning a difficult lesson. But you can understand the way your brain works, and that will maybe help you to accept the pain, is that our brain actually has several different parts of our brain have different capacities. So the part that gets triggered when we're in pain is that fight or flight brain, that reptilian brain, which is our oldest brain. And it's very primitive. And so all it really knows is I'm experiencing pain. I must be in danger. I need to make it stop. I need to run away. I need to distract. I need to get this to stop. I'm in a panic. And when we realize that that part of the brain is built to do that for us, because we need that sometimes, you know, if a lion really is chasing us, I want that part of my brain to activate. So I'll run away. Definitely want that to happen. So we want to embrace that part of our brain, but we also want to realize when it's activating in a time that's not helpful. So by just knowing that that part of your brain activates, you can then also redirect it. So you can bring your brain to the part of your brain, the frontal cortex, that is more the reasoning brain, the brain that knows how to look at things a little more abstractly and knows how to create a little distance from the pain so that you can process it while still feeling it and to make some sense of it and take the next appropriate action. And that's really sort of like the adult brain, let's say. So what we can do is we can learn some skills that help us shift from that reptilian brain when it's in a panic into the frontal cortex brain. And one of the skills is by breathing. It's a simple thing. Everybody can breathe. So what we want to do when we want to calm down the nervous system, the activated reptilian brain, is we want to take a really deep breath into the belly, into your belly. We don't want to breathe from the chest because that actually creates more panic. But if we can pull the breath into the belly, take a deep breath into the belly and let it expand, and then breathe out on a count longer than the in-breath. So for example, we could breathe into the belly. You can try it now. You can breathe into your belly on a count of 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold it. And then breathe out to a count of 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And you can be very empty on 7 and then take another deep breath. So if you do that for a few minutes, it's going to calm down the whole nervous system. And you're going to be able to cope with whatever's happening to you a lot better and make that shift into the frontal cortex where that part of the brain, which is more mature, can make the appropriate choice in the moment. Rather than reacting, it can be coming from a productive choice that's going to be more serving you and whoever you're around at that moment.
Thank you, Kerri. Great answer. Let's go with the next one. Is Western medicine actually drifting us away from the awakening?
That is a really good question. I think that Western medicine is really good at keeping you alive when you're on the brink of death. So in that way, if there's a spectrum of medicine, I've heard it talked about this way, like if you can see my hands, if you look at it this way, and this is birth and this is death, Western medicine deals with this part. It's like very small slice, between you and death. And what we want to be dealing with is this other part, this much bigger piece of health. We want to be looking at this. So Western medicine is really designed to provide a quick solution to keep you from going over the edge, basically. So in that way, you can look at it, it's keeping us here, right? It's keeping us alive. So it's letting us continue the journey. So I wouldn't say that it's keeping us from awakening, except in the sense of Western medicine that's prescribing medication that creates emotional and physical distance from the pain to such a degree that you can't learn the lesson that you were meant to learn from that discomfort or pain. And that's where the spiritual journey comes in. Because the awakening, a lot of times you'll hear people talk about awakening. I interview a lot of people on my show, Soul Nectar Show, Spiritual Awakening Show. And almost every single person will say, except for the exception of one person I interviewed, everybody else says, I went through some very difficult things and difficult challenges. And it was the discomfort of those challenges that actually, pushed me to the place where I was able to wake up, where I was able to let go of the personality, and let go of the of being the contents of the bowl rather than the bowl. And certainly in my case, that was true. I needed the suffering in order to ascend, and in order to understand and really surrender to this bigger power. And I think for many of us, the reason we are able to do that, if we're able to do that at some point very easily, is because you kind of have this idea like, well, it's got to be better than this. I mean, I kind of reached the edge of what I think I can handle or do, and it's gotten me to this kind of low place, or this dark place. So it's got to be better than this. So I'm willing to do the work. I'm willing to let go of whatever I thought I knew, just to see if it gets better. So I do think in that way, awakening depends on a certain amount of being able to be able to let go of what you think you know and step into another possibility. So yes, certainly being on medication, but other kinds of distractions too, like alcohol and a lot of television and just plain busyness, even over exercising. Like there's so many ways that people can distract from the thing that they're really needing to listen to. There's a lot of, we have endless ways. The ego has endless ways to avoid the work. It really does. It's very clever. So if you're kind of feeling that pull, a really good tip is to realize that, the ego does have endless distractions when it's feeling threatened. And all of that bringing up distractions that it does is because it's afraid. It's afraid of what? It's afraid of love. And you could say, well, why is the ego afraid of love? Love is wonderful. Well, love creates unity, and the ego exists in separation. So of course it's terrified of love. It thinks it's going to die. It thinks you're trying to wipe it out of existence. So the thing to do with that is to just say, I love you, and I can't live without you on earth. I need you. Actually, you help me be in the physical body. You help keep me safe. I'm not getting rid of you. I'm just, giving you a different role in my life, and that way we can get along better. So I think it's really bringing more love to the situation, more compassion, that helps the awakening process.
Thank you, Kerri.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go with the next one. Our family and friends sometimes don't want us to change, like the butterfly. How do we deal with that?
That's a really good question. Yes, your family doesn't want you to change, because as humans, we don't like change. We like everything to stay the same, because then we know what's going to happen. And we like to predict things. And when things get unpredictable, we get uncomfortable. And so just expect that if you've decided to make that journey to awakening, and that's what your soul is really calling for, that's what your heart is saying, that you need to trust that process and realize that you're probably not going to get a lot of support from friends or family to make that journey, especially if they haven't made that journey yet. They're going to probably be very threatened by it and think that it's crazy and have a lot of other things to say about it, especially as you start changing. And also, you can't expect them to notice the change in you. They're going to deny the change in you. You could see the change very clearly. New people that you meet could see the change in you very clearly. Friends who are also on the path can see the change in you very clearly. Your family and your close people will deny the change until it's undeniable. And so if you can just expect that that's part of the process, then you don't have to suffer over it. You can just know that that's going to happen, and you can have compassion for the fear that's causing that reaction in your family and your friends. Now, if you're needing your family or your friends to see the change in you so that you can feel validated, well, now that's personal work that you need to do, because, a lot of what happens on this awakening journey is a movement away from external gratification and external validation and external reward into an internal reward, an internal reason, a why that's inside. And all of that being concerned what other people think about you has to do with the ego that is projecting its image of perfection out there in the world so that it can get the love and acceptance that it wants from other people. But when you take the journey to awakening, it's really more of a realization that while it's certainly pleasant to be in sync with another person or be understood, that the biggest source of nurturing and love and feel good is the one that you get when you're tuned into who you really are in truth. And that is something you receive, a vibration, a frequency that you receive from yourself as you are in resonance with the truth of your being. So that's an internal experience. It's not an external experience. And it can lead to external feel-good stuff, you know, like finding other people that are in resonance with themselves feels really good, actually. But the actual experience of awakening is more, you know, being in your own resonance and being in truth of that. And so that's the validation, I guess, if you want to call it that. But I think validation just sort of becomes less and less important the more that you are in resonance with your truth.
Okay, thank you so much, Kerri. The next question, let me see. Why are we disconnected to the creator?
We're not disconnected. We think we are, but we're not. That's a complete illusion, and it's the illusion of separation. So, yeah, the disconnection feeling is a creation to allow us to have the experience of being separate, to have the experience of being different than all that is, to being somehow separate from it. But it's actually impossible to be separate from it because you are it. So you can't be separate from that which you are. I mean, every one of us is connected to source. We are source. We're made of source. And there's no way to be made of anything other than source. It's not possible because everything is source. So I think that what contributes to that idea is a lot of religion that says, you know, this thing is external to you and God is external and it's up there in the clouds somewhere. But that is a very misguided understanding because it's everything that is. It's in the rock. It's in the tree. It's in the air between me and this computer. It's in the computer. It's in me. It's in my dog. It's everywhere. There isn't anything that's living that doesn't have source energy in it. It's not possible. So, but we get to have the illusion of being separate. We get to have the illusion so that we can feel lonely and we can feel sad and we can feel, you know, rejected. And if we have the illusion of separateness, we get to have all those experiences, which are interesting to experience when all you know is that you're a source, when you're not in a body. So it's really just to create this matrix that we can have a set of experiences that we can't have when we're connected to all that is, when we are a source and we're aware of being source. So I think that what contributes to the feeling of separateness is, you know, certainly the way that our modern technological society has grown, putting us between each other like this, this screens, you know, the social media and the screens, and when we hide in our houses and we don't go out and visit with people. If you look at depression, when you're starting to feel depressed, the first thing that you want to do is hole up and be by yourself and be in a dark room. And that's the opposite of what you actually need. So you have to start asking the question, who's deciding that I need to be in a room by myself? Which aspect of me is deciding that, when what would make me feel better is to be connected? So these are, this experience of being separate is just an experience. It's not the truth. The truth is that we are source. There is nothing outside of source. And we're always connected because there is no time or space either, where this is an illusion that we get to have. It's really fun illusion. And we get to experience thinking that we can't connect, but we could connect right now. For those of you that are very intuitive, you could feel my energy in this moment. You could feel it all around you. If you're listening in a different way, you can feel that presence and that connection, that energy, even though we're halfway around the world. So there is no separation anywhere except in the illusion of the separation.
Thank you. That was a very good answer. The next one, it's about children. It says, when children are prescribed medicines, how can we help them not to need the pharmaceutical products?
Well, that is such a good question. You know, one of the speakers on my summit, Skills Not Pills, is Dr. Nikisha Hammond. And she talks about this in depth, that our children are overdiagnosed as ADHD and what to do about that. So, you know, check out skillsnotpillsmovement.com, and you can actually watch her interview for free coming up on June 1st and 2nd. But in terms of what I teach and what I understand, you know, children are really good about this once you teach them the concepts. One thing that children could really use is, and actually all of us could really use, is a lot of grounding, you know, because the earth has a frequency of resonance that when we get into alignment with that resonance, we are healed of many things. We feel happy. If you just spend enough time in nature, you notice how after spending a good, let's say a nice walk in nature that's half an hour or something, you get out with the trees and you're outdoors, and especially if you are barefoot on the grass, you actually just feel better after that. You know, it's just one of those experiences that makes you feel happier. Well, that's because you're aligning your body's vibration with the vibration of the earth. And when you're in alignment with the vibration of the earth, you feel better. When you are dissonant with the earth, that's when you start to have dis-ease. It's like your body is not at ease. It's not feeling good. So I always tell people to help children learn how to ground. And of course, a simple physical dimension way of grounding is to be on the earth with bare feet. They've done studies on this that have proven that, you know, 5 minutes a day, even barefoot on the earth, will improve your psychological health, will improve your mental health, and will reduce depression. But you don't need to go outside. Let's say you're in a part of the world where it's icing outside and you can't be barefoot on the earth. It's too cold out. You can still ground to the earth in your mind, and it's real. And I think this is the part that people that are very attached to the third dimension don't understand, is that our imagination is actually creating connection in a multidimensional way that can help our physical bodies feel more comfortable, actually. So you can tell your little kid to be like a tree. And kids know how to be like a tree. It's so simple. You just say, close your eyes, and I want you to be like a tree. Put your roots all the way into the ground, all as deep as you can get them, and stretch your branches high in the sky and get all the starlight and all the sunlight and filter it down through all your leaves and into the center of your being, where you have a big glowing ball of light. And you can, in that moment, teach your child how to ground. And they take to it so quickly. It's easy for them. They have imaginations. They know how to do it. So you just make it okay by telling them that's okay. And if you're having trouble being around your children, because a lot of times children have a lot of needs, you know, they're very dependent on us as parents, and especially young mothers can be really overwhelmed by the demands of their children. It's overwhelming. It's energetically overwhelming, because in fact, they're like sticking little taproots into you and like feeding off of you, just like they would nurse, you know. They are doing that energetically because they are dependent on you for their survival. And That's just sort of an automated reflex, is to cord to your mother. So what you can do is train them how to be like a tree. And you can explain that, the earth has, ask them, say, who has more energy, your mommy or the earth? Like, little kids will be like, well, the earth is really big, so it must have more energy. Yes. And you can just tell them in that moment, close your eyes, and I'm going to close my eyes, and let's both be like trees in the earth. And notice if, if you're putting any, like, if you're wrapping any little cords around me, or you're like really holding on to me, maybe you could just put a little one to me and then put most of them in the earth and put all those roots down in the earth and be like a tree. And it's amazing how quickly you notice the shift in your own body. Like, I did this with my husband's little kids, my stepchildren, and I had been watching them all week while he was out of town. And by the end of the week, I was feeling very drained. Like, I am so tired. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, wait a second. I bet they're courting to me because they're afraid because he's out of town. And they're like, oh no, my dad's out of town. So I did that with them each individually. And all of a sudden I had way more energy. Like I wasn't tired anymore at all. I wasn't drained. I felt great. I had plenty of energy to keep going. So I think it's an interesting experiment to run, to just try it and see what happens. And like I said, if you want to be attached to the story of how you think it was or how you think life is, then you can kind of stay in the one world. If you want to open to an experiment and try it out and see what happens with your kids, you can open to the other world and just run the experiment and just do a personal little assessment. Before I taught my kids how to do that, how did I feel? And now that I taught my kids how to do that, how do I feel? And it can be like 5-minute experiment to just run that experiment and see what happens. So I think that as we teach our kids how to do these important things, like ground to the earth, shield their energy, look inside for the answers instead of being worried and looking and scanning and being distracted, but to focus their minds inside. As we teach our kids that, we're not going to need all of these, labels and diagnoses and all of this kind of pills and things like that, because they're going to have the skills they need to focus no matter what's going on around them. And I also want to make a little commentary about the school systems, that, the way that we currently have our school systems in the United States is just extremely unreasonable for any student who's a kinesthetic learner. Kinesthetic learners having to sit still in a seat for 8 hours in 3rd grade is like putting a little child in jail. And they're not learning because they learn through movement. They learn through using their other senses. So maybe it works for some kids that are able to tune in that way, to sit in a classroom and listen and pay attention. But other kids that aren't built that way, that need to move in order to learn, they're not being served at all by our educational system. They're being diagnosed and given pills, and they're being drugged because the teachers don't have the bandwidth to deal with 30 students in their classroom and teach them. So the ones that are kinesthetic learners that need to move are like causing trouble for the other kids in the classroom who are able to sit still. So I think the kinesthetic learners are probably like normal if you brought them back a century. You plunk those kids, take that same kid today and plunk that kid in the 1900s, and people would be like, that's a completely normal kid. That is normal what they're doing. But today we have these other expectations that don't really match the needs of the child. So I think we have a lot of work to do to revamp our educational system.
That is super important and interesting. Thank you.
Yes.
Let me see. The next one says, what do you think about fluoride and other materials? Is it true that they keep us from realizing our spiritual side?
Well, I've definitely heard that. And I think that I would tune into some naturopathic websites more than relying on Kerri Hummingbird for that information. But I will say that I have definitely heard that information. I was at the Paleo FX conference in April, and there are very well-known doctors that were presenting at that conference that were teaching a lot of information about how fluoride and even like EMF, like this electromagnetic, the technology that it's emitting, all of that is toxins on our system. And that we need to be mindful of that. And even they were talking about certain elements of prenatal vitamins are actually toxic, and they don't ever get processed by our bodies, and that's causing disease not only for the mothers later on in life, but for the children. So there's a lot of things that we're finding out now, and the level of information is rapid fire because of the internet. So to stay on top of all of that, I would really I would say to track the speakers that are speaking at high level conferences like Paleo FX and other natural based conferences, to really get on their email list and their website and tune in regularly to the latest information, because they're going to have much more ready access to the latest information that we're getting than even your local doctor is going to have, because chances are your local doctor is not doesn't have the bandwidth to keep up with all the latest research that's coming out. So you need somebody who's actually focused on getting all that information together and putting it out there for people to know. There's studies happening all the time in medical journals even that your average doctor is not reading and keeping up to date with, because their crazy hectic work schedule, seeing a patient every 15 minutes isn't even tapping into the amount of information that's out there. So, but yes, I definitely have heard that about fluoride. You can get a water filtration system to filter out impurities in your water, and I recommend looking into that. I don't have any to recommend to you today, but I know that there's lots of water filters, water filtration systems out there that you can get that can filter your water so that you're getting the cleanest water possible. And on the spiritual side, you can actually pray and put light in your food. So you can illuminate your water and you can illuminate your food. So even if your food had something undesirable in it, you can illuminate that water and that food with your love and your light and your intention. And Dr. Emoto's work with water actually proves that point. If you aren't familiar with that research, that project that he worked on, they actually labeled jars of water with different words, even just words, like one word on a bottle of water. Like let's say one bottle had a word with peace on the outside, and another bottle had a word of hate. The water that had peace actually tested more with less toxins and more healthy than the water with hate on the bottle had more toxins in it, and it was the same water to start. So that to me is fascinating. Beyond that, he took a dropper of water from each bottle and he created a snowflake with each, and the water that had a peaceful or a beautiful word associated with it, it had like a most gorgeous, beautiful snowflake, like symmetrical, gorgeous snowflake. And the snowflake created by the water with the more low vibration word like hate or anger or whatever the word was malformed. It was malformed and discolored. So we are 70% water. And most of the food we eat has a large component of water. So if you think about it, you can put positive intentions into your water, into your food. You can put love in it, as my husband likes to say. He likes to put love in the food before we eat. And you can always tell when the food has got love put in it versus when, you rushed to make the food and you're just like, I just got to eat and I got to get this kid, this family fed and blah, 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 blah. And I'm just going to hurry. Versus when you took the time to put intention in the food and put love in the food, it has a whole different vibration that is going to be more healthy for your body than the food that you sort of like got at McDonald's, for example. And please don't eat any fast food.
Thank you. That's beautiful. We're almost ready, but there's a couple more questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
How can we quiet the ego?
Well, when the ego gets noisy, it gets noisy for several reasons. One reason the ego gets noisy is because it's afraid. It's afraid of what? It's afraid of judgment. It's afraid, like a lot of clients get a noisy ego, right, as they come to their first session with me, or they kind of have a discovery call because at some level, the ego knows like, uh-oh, we're going to have a meeting with Kerri Hummingbird and then I might not exist, right? So I always have the conversation with the person on the first call, like, we're not getting rid of the ego. We're not getting rid of the ego. The ego, you can't get rid of it anyway. And we don't want to get rid of it because it's valuable. It's a valuable asset for living in a body. We need the ego in order to be here on earth. So we love the ego. And that chattering mind prevents us from reaching that expanded place of the bowl of soul essence. It keeps us from getting to that beautiful, big, expanded space where we can tap into the flow of our resonance and things happen easy for us. So we want to be able to get to that resonance place, and we can't get there for just a monkey mind. The thing is just chatter, 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 chatter. So why does the ego act up? Well, the closer that you get to awakening, the ego intensifies its efforts to save itself because it likes having control. Who wants to give up control when you've got control? So the ego doesn't like losing control. And it's not really sure it's going to be better on the other side because the ego is fear-based, right? It's all based in fear. So it's not really sure it's going to get better on the other side. So a lot of what it's doing also is testing your resolve. Like, how bad do you want to wake up? How bad do you really want to be in a new space? Like, how much do you want it? It's also kind of testing you. And so it can get very triggered and very active. And if you have a lot of self-judgment, the ego can get very loud with self-judgment. Whenever you're feeling criticized, or you're criticizing yourself, or you're going into maybe a new thing you haven't done before. So there's this opportunity to judge yourself in a way you haven't been judged yet. So the ego gets very defensive and worried about that happening. And at the end of the day, I had this wonderful example I'll share here from my good friend, GP Walsh. He's an amazing person, also helps people to awaken. He had this wonderful story that he shared with me. He says, you know how the president is going to the White House, and there's the big procession, and there's the limo with like thousands of doors on it, and they make a big deal out of the president driving to the White House. Meanwhile, the actual president, is going in an unmarked car through the kitchen in the back of the White House. He's not even in that limo. That's the way the ego is. The ego is in the limo. The ego is the decoy. The ego is taking the hit for who? Well, for the soul, for the beautiful, bright light that came in to have a physical experience. That soul, the real president, is going in the back kitchen, totally protected, because the ego is out front being the decoy. So you can really take yourself in a lot of gratitude for your ego for being the decoy, so that the light that you are has gone unharmed while you've been on earth, even through all whatever horrendous things you went through. The light that you are has been protected the whole time by the ego, until the point that the light that you are is ready to step up and take command of this ship. And the ego wants to be sure you're really ready, because it didn't spend all this time protecting your ass for you to like lose it at the last minute. So it's like, hey, you need to prove to me that you've got it covered, that you know how to protect yourself, that you know how to stand in your truth, that you're really ready to run this ship. And when I'm sufficiently proven on that point, I will back off. I'll let you do what you need to do, and I'll just be here to support you. So there's this inner struggle as you're working through the awakening work of the ego really testing you. Like, are you sure you're ready to take command? Or because I've been protecting you a long time and I don't want to mess it up. Like, please let me know that you're really ready. And so I think you can look at it like a partnership and a guide who's really wanting to be sure that you're gonna be able to take over and lead this, lead your life in a beautiful direction, and that you've got it covered. So I think whenever you see the ego acting up, you've got to either just think to yourself, my ego must be really worried about something that I'm not looking at and not paying attention to. So why don't I go and pay attention to that for just a moment? See what it is, bring some love and light and compassion to it. And if I need to do something differently, then I will make a new choice, to make a better choice that satisfies myself and my ego, so that I know I'm going forward in a good way. And so just take a moment to listen, because probably there's something that you've overlooked that needs addressing.
Okay, that was deep.
I know, right? I'm just channeling this, so sometimes.
Wow. It says here, I feel like I need to control everything around me, especially my feelings. We're more or less in the same current. How do I allow myself just to feel and trust my intuition / gut?
So intuition and gut are important, and they are only one piece of the puzzle. So when we're listening, when we're learning how to navigate from the soul, we want to take into factor several different avenues of information and combine them. So a lot of people say you should lead your life from your heart. And while in premise I agree with that, it's also important to include, your mind, what your brain is telling you. Your brain has got some good wisdom. Your left brain has got some good insights. It's pragmatic, it's just like the ego. It knows third dimensional living. So you don't want to disregard that information. You want to bring in your gut, because your body is telling you things. Your stomach is digesting experience and emotion and things like that, right? So it has information to tell you. But you want to also balance that information with more soul viewing. So like, here's a really unique technique, and I wish I could remember the person that I got it from. I apologize, I can't. But you can tune in and look at the situation. This is such a good exercise. So whenever you have one of these things where you're feeling emotional, you can close your eyes and you can tune into your emotion center, which is kind of down around your belly button. And you can, in your mind's eye, see the situation coming from your belly button. And you can even take a moment now and just think of something that triggered you and view it from your belly button area. And just notice the experience in your body. Probably you're feeling the emotion associated with that incident in your body. Now, clear the energy of that. And now you want to put your attention in the center of your forehead, in your third eye, and imagine that you're looking through a triangle through your third eye. Like there's a triangle from the third eye down to your eyes. And imagine you can look through that triangular window at the same situation. And notice how different that is. So it's important to pay attention to the emotion, because that's one form of information that you're getting from your body. And it's also important to bring it up to the soul level, see through the third eye, the situation, and notice what's different. Notice what other information comes up. And then notice what your brain is telling you, what your left brain is telling you. Then notice what your heart is saying. Maybe tune into your heart with the situation. And then take all of that information and now see what pieces weave together. See what pieces now make sense as something you want to explore with some journaling, or that you want to have a discussion with somebody about. But it's really kind of looking at things at all levels. And the emotional piece is not an unusual piece for people to skip over, because our society, at least Western culture in the United States, does not like emotion. Like, don't cry, don't get angry. You shouldn't have that only if you're happy. Like, we have the happy culture, like on plastic happy all the time. Like, if you are not on plastic happy, there's something wrong with you. That's kind of the message we can get from our culture. When actually the emotions are very powerful teachers. They have a lot to tell us about how our body is reacting to things and how we are reacting at an emotional level. That's we have a whole emotion body. So when we take medication to quiet and dim the emotional aspect of ourselves, a lot of people feel better because they're like, oh, I don't have all that emotion now. I can get on with my life. But they don't realize until they stop taking the medication that all the emotion is still happening. It didn't stop. It's just that you turned off your sensitivity meter for realizing it. It gets lodged in the body. And that's why a lot of people, when they try to go off antidepressants, they find themselves like crying and depressed all the time because they've got to release the backlog of however long they were on those medications, the backlog of emotions that never got expressed, never got felt, never got released because the volume on them was turned down to the point where they could be ignored. But it's not that they didn't happen. They still happened. They're still in the body and they need to be released. So the best thing to do with emotion is not ignore it. Also, not feed it with stories. So there's this really interesting little balance between feeling the emotion and letting it express in a healthy way, i.e. not at somebody, but just with yourself. Like, oh, this situation triggered me and it really has nothing to do with that person. It has everything to do with me. I'm going to find a quiet space and let myself release it. That kind of releasing. And then noticing if you're feeding the story. Because we don't want to feed the story, the emotion with more stories. If we're feeding the emotion with stories to provoke the emotion and to keep it going, then we're not helping ourselves to heal. And it's not productive. So there's this balance between allowing the emotion to express itself while not feeding it and provoking it to have a bigger drama reaction, but just allowing it to express itself so that you get the message of why it was there in the first place. And then you can do something with that message. You can take an action in your life. Maybe you need to set a boundary. Maybe you need to tell somebody something. Maybe you just need to process that thing inside of you, whatever the outcome is. But we have to let the emotion express. If we don't express it, it stays in the body. And unexpressed emotion accumulates to the point where, like, a volcanic eruption happens because a feather just like poofs on top of the volcano. It's like, bam, that thing where you get so overreactive over something so simple and ridiculous. Like, why do you get so upset over that thing? Because there's a backlog, because there's a lot of an ocean of emotion that hasn't gotten expressed. So we want to let it express without feeding it. And we want to listen to it to understand its message. And then we want to take an action, because the action is the thing that's going to put us in a new place so that we don't recreate that same situation in our lives. We learn the lesson. I hope that was good.
I think it was.
Okay.
Thank you, Kerri. Now we are at the end of our talk. This is the end, really the end for tonight.
Okay, well, so
we want to thank you on behalf of the Mindalia TV team for being here with us, for sharing with our audience so much wisdom. That knowledge is amazing. Before leaving, there's a couple of things. Just as always, we want to remind our audience that if they want to help Mindalia TV reach more people around the globe, a couple of things that you can do: subscribe to our channel, like this video, leaving us a positive comment down below. Also help us reach as much people as possible around the globe. Kerri, before leaving, we want to ask you, where can our audience find you? What are the ways to reach you?
Absolutely. So they can look me up at kerrihummingbird.com. That's Kerri hummingbird.com. And I think I'm just looking it up right now, but Skills Not Pills Movement, and I think I created a special link for you guys. Mindalia TV. No, I have to find it for you guys, and you can put it on the thing, on the link. But yeah, skillsnotpillsmovement.com is a website for finding out about how you can get off pills or how you can pursue alternative healing. And then kerrihummingbird.com for information about working with me if you feel inspired to do that.
Thank you. And a goodbye to our audience.
Bye, everybody. Hope that was helpful.
Yes. Thank you, everyone, one more time for joining us tonight. And until next time, where we will meet at Mindalia live streaming. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.